Man, I reckon this is the 10th episode now, and every time I start this, I don't know what to say at the start. Still, every single time, I overthink the shit out of it, and I end up saying some weird ass stuff that I end up cutting. Um, anyway, so today what I am going to talk about is I'm going to talk about how to train twice a day. Now, firstly, you don't need to train twice a day to achieve most fitness goals out there, right? Like it's a pretty unnecessary thing to do. Like there's other ways you can work around it. But there are some benefits of training twice a day, as you could probably imagine. Some of those benefits being like physical, but also just like from a time point of view, it's a lot easier to train twice a day sometimes when you got to manage things like a job, other commitments, whether it be family or not. Like it can be quite time consuming having to train for like 3-4 hours in one block. And like from my own experiences as well, like it can be really unrealistic. Like if I got to start work at 6-7 a.m. sometimes and I've got to do a 3-4 hour bike ride, how the fuck am I going to fit that in before it? Like, yes, and you can be super hard and you could wake up at 3 a.m. and do it, and that's fine. But, like that's a finite thing. Like it's not realistic to do that every single day. And there was a period where I was doing stuff like that, but you just run out. Like you're burning at both ends. So you've got to think about it a little bit more rather than just being like, yeah, I'm going to wake up earlier and train for longer. Like, so that's where twice a day can have some merit. So what I'm going to talk about, there's a few things, right? So I want to give you the tools so that if you did want to train twice a day, you're going to be able to go, okay, these are the things I need to understand to be able to train twice a day. I want you to understand like adaptive energy, which we're going to cover. We're going to look into things like how your goal is going to affect whether or not you should train twice a day, what's optimal versus possible, just a few things like that. Okay, so when you're wanting to train twice a day, there's a few things you need to consider. Now, as I was saying at the start of this, like you don't necessarily need to train twice a day. It's almost unnecessary for most people. However, if you do like training and you want to have more of it, it can be really, really useful. It can also be really useful when you have really long endurance bouts. So you've got 3-4 hour sessions that you can't fit into one block. It can also be useful if you're wanting to maintain a lot of strength training, because then you can put your aerobic fitness outside of that strength work without creating this really, really big session. So for an example, like let's say you wanted to still maintain 3-4 weight sessions, but you still wanted to get your aerobic fitness in, like your long distance cardiovascular training. You don't have to go bang out a weight session in the morning for an hour and then go bang out a 2-hour run or a ride or something, right? Like you can split them. Now, before we jump into this, there's something that you need to understand, and that is adaptive energy. And there's a few ways we could talk about this, but we're just going to simplify the shit out of it, all right? Every day, this is how I want you to think of it. Every day you wake up with a certain amount of adaptive energy in a day, right? So let's just call it 100 points of adaptive energy. Everything you do in that day, you're giving those points away. So if you go for a run, you're putting a certain amount of adaptive energy into your body so that your body is going to adapt to that run. It's going to make you more efficient. You're going to get better at running, right? Now, when you split that and you do like weights training and a run, you can, I guess, without going into it too scientifically, you kind of confuse that adaptive energy. Your brain and body and everything's going, oh, okay, should I get better at running or should I get better at getting strong, right? Now, you can concurrently work at these things together. Absolutely. You definitely can. But, to be an absolutely phenomenal runner at the same time as being an absolutely phenomenal strength athlete is more difficult. And anyone who says it's not more difficult is an idiot, right? Yes, you can do it. That's not what this conversation is about. You can absolutely do it. But there's a lot of things you need to consider. So when you're training twice a day, if you've got big strength goals and you've got big endurance goals, like someone like myself, where you want to maintain that, physical performance, you want to still be like a strong, bigger person, but you still want to be able to do endurance events, then twice a day training is honestly awesome for this, because you can split that adaptive energy. So you can go in the morning, I'm going to do a strength workout. And then at night, you can go and do your long distance cardio. You know, the next morning you might do your long distance cardio and then you might do your strength workout, right? And what's good about that is, and from experience here, like I think that has less of a negative impact than doing them one after each other. And if you were to do like a weight session and then go hit a run, I feel like the recovery process and isn't the same as if you were to split them. Now, a general rule here and like a bit of a principle around this is the further you can get them away from each other, the clearer the message is. So if you can run at 5 a.m. and then you can weights train at 5 p.m., you've got a 12 hours kind of split here before you're going again. So the message is quite clear, right? Now, that's not to say you can't blend the two together, but I'm talking from like a recovery standpoint. I'm talking from like a constant progression standpoint. These are things that you need to take into consideration. So, you know, when you're taking these things into consideration, you've got to look at like, first off, you know, what is the most important? So I think this is where it comes down to your goal matters. So before you're going into working out your training program, you need to look at like, what is my goal? My goal is to be an endurance runner, right? So the hierarchy of importance here, endurance running is my most important thing here. So I'm going to make sure I've got all my endurance running sessions in. You're going to look at two factors here. You're going to go, okay, what's the volume and what's the intensity? So how long or how fast am I going to need to run? How many days a week or how many hours per week is probably a better way of looking at it. And then you can build your program around that. And then you can slot your resistance training in because that's second to your running training, right? Now, if the opposite was true, and your strength training was the most important, you would then build your program first with strength training, and then you would supplement your running around it. Now, when you're looking at this ideal program, and when you're looking at training twice a day, this is how I like to do it. So for me, like I want to be able to do 3 days of resistance training when I'm closer to a goal, and then 2 when I get really close to it, and then 4 to 5 resistance sessions when I'm really far away from that endurance goal, right? So it kind of staggers its way. But when you're thinking about, sorry, I just lost my train of thought there. But when you're thinking about building this program, sometimes it can be very unrealistic to build them all into one morning. So for example, if my goal is to do 3 resistance sessions a week, my goal is also to do 3 really long distance endurance sessions. And then I also want to be able to do my anaerobic work here. So my high intensity interval training. On top of that, I still want to maybe get an extra run in. So all of a sudden I've got 9 sessions. 9 essentially messages I want to send to my body here, right? I want to send 3 days of strength training and resistance training. I want to send 3 aerobic signals, and then I want to send maybe 1 to 2 anaerobic signals. And yes, if you were to put all of them in one session, like if you were to do a mixture of all of them, would you get better? Absolutely. That's not what this conversation's about. But how do we optimize it for performance, right? And enjoyment too, because I think doing a run and straight into a strength session, you feel like shit. But those are the things you need to take into consideration, right? So if we were to look at how we could fit that into like a program where we're wanting to get all of those things in, right? We can do Monday, Wednesday, Friday with strength training. We could do Tuesday, Thursday, or Saturday with your long distance endurance training, whether that be bike, running, swimming, whatever it is, real low aerobic stuff. And then we've got this, okay, what's left? Well, I still really would like to get in my anaerobic training. When can I do it? And then you've got a couple of options here. You could go, okay, well, I'm going to do a post resistance training, which I think is a nice way of doing it too. So you do your resistance training, you finish with that post kind of anaerobic work, so your interval stuff, or you do your strength training in the morning and then you do your 400 meter sprints at night, right? And that can be a really nice way of fitting those 2 sessions in. Now, the alternative could be things like, okay, I've got Tuesday morning, I'm supposed to do 3 hours of running or 3 hours of cycling or 3 hours of something, but I'm quite time poor in that morning, so I'm going to split it over 2 sessions. Or that's how I just fucking want to do it. So those are also good opportunities to do twice a day kind of training. The only thing I think with training twice a day is it can really tax you. So you've just got to be mindful of like volume and intensity when you're doing those things. So there's just a couple of principles for you. I've written down a couple of like recommendations and nice pairs of things that I like to do. And I think things that I've had clients do that have worked really well. So this is the best, in my opinion, this is the best way of training twice a day if you're going to do that. So it would be strength work alternating with low aerobic cardio work. So for example, you do your heavy strength work in the morning, and then you're going for a really like casual jog or ride at night, right? Then you've got your strength work alternating with your high intensity work. So this would be like you're doing your strength work on a Monday, and then at night you would do your sprints or your interval training, right? Another nice pair is your strength work into post strength work intervals, or strength work post low aerobic work. Now, this is the thing. I think getting that extra low aerobic work, so your slow, steady state cardio post resistance training, is good. But when your sessions are an hour and a half, 2 hours, yeah, it's not as good. Like it just doesn't have the right effect. And I've tried it like that. You feel like it's really diluted. You feel like your aerobic work's diluted. You feel like your recovery is diluted. I think the performance starts to lack. So I think when you're doing things post strength sessions, right? So like you finish your resistance session, then you go for a run, having a 3 hour or 2 hour cardiovascular session post weights is probably not the best way of doing it. And that's where the twice a day split is nice when you're limited on time. Right? So this is the thing, preference matters here too. So really what I want you to come away with this from is like, I want you to be able to go like, oh, these are some principles that I can apply when I want to train twice a day, right? So the reason just on this as well, if you've noticed that I've said strength work always first, and I think that if you're going to do 2 sessions in one day, you do your strength work first, because there's no point, you don't go for a 2 hour run and then you go bang out 3 RM on a deadlift, right? Like it's not the way you're going to do it. That's when injury happens. Aerobic stuff's pretty okay to do when you're tired. So that's where it makes more sense to do your resistance sessions first. So to summarize this, right? You don't need to train twice a day. First and foremost, you do not need to train twice a day. But if you're wanting to, there's certain principles that you should look towards so that you can optimize it for performance and recovery. So why would you train twice a day? Things like time, things like enjoyment, preference, right? Maximizing adaptive energy is another one. And I think it's a nice way to keep your strength work high as well, right? Like when you're able to train twice a day, you're able to get more resistance sessions in and recover from them better. That's my opinion on it. There's some science backing that up as well. But third thing, adaptive energy, understanding it. Thinking of it like a little, like a game bar, a health bar when you're playing a game, right? Like you start with a certain amount of points. Everything you do is directed towards something. You've got to decide what you want to direct that towards. Confusing the stimuli when you're training can sometimes be negative from a recovery and performance point of view. So having a clear signal is a good way of doing it. I think number 4, your goal matters. Like number 1, first and foremost, what's your goal? What's the main thing you want out of this? Set that. Make sure you understand that. Make sure you know what goes into your program as the hierarchy of importance and work your way backwards. And that's when you can split over 2 sessions. Number 5, optimal versus possible, right? This is really important. What is the best for you that you're not going to do is not worth putting in your program, right? So like it's all good and well to be like, oh, I want to train twice a day, 7 days a week. You're not going to fucking do it. Or, oh, I've got these 6-hour cardio sessions. My coach has said that I should do them over 3 2-hour blocks. However, I know that I can't fit a 2-hour block in. So it might be more optimal to do, a Tuesday morning for 2 hours, but it's not possible. So that's where you can split it over Tuesday morning for 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour at night. Whoop-de-fucking-do if you're splitting it, right? What's optimal doesn't matter when it's not possible. So it's just important to remember that. And then just the recommendations on nice pairs, right? So strength training usually first, then post anaerobic work, post aerobic work to a certain point. And then if you're going to split sessions, try and have a clear stimuli, morning, night, morning, night, morning, night, and as far away from each other as possible. So there's essentially some things you can do if you're wanting to train twice a day. And I'll leave you with that. But I guess my number 1 tip for you there is just don't feel like you need to because of the pressure that you see with a lot of other athletes and a lot of people that are training twice a day. I personally only train twice a day for mostly things like anaerobic work, those high intensity intervals, because and most of the time it's because I can't be fucked doing them after my weight session. because I just want to get out of there. And I like the idea of just coming to the oval, doing some sprints, 20, 30 minutes, and then that's it. I also get to train twice a day, which is fucking mad because I love training twice a day. So those are some things to, I guess, focus on. And that is all. Thank you very much.